Hello, good morning, good evening, farmers. Welcome to Barak Bowl Farms. My name is Barak, as usual. It's my great pleasure to yet again have a chat about another episode about goat farming or goat tips, right? So I really want to thank you guys for having subscribed on our YouTube channel. Baraka Boas Farms. Thank you so much for those who have subscribed. Those that haven't subscribed, I also would encourage you to do so if you find this message helpful or if you think that someone is going to benefit from this message. Um, yeah, and we also have a TikTok account. Again, it goes by Barak Boas, um, and also Instagram. So we pretty much everywhere, and even Facebook. We've got a Facebook page and group. So we hope that the more we can share, the more people will get to know about goats farming and you know get the knowledge, the more people that will benefit from it. So thank you, keep sharing. We thank you and keep going. So today's message, I'm going to talk to you guys about. I'll talk to you about one important topic, which is medication. So before we dive into this today, I just want to let you know that my advice today is not professional. So it's mainly drawn from my personal experience, engaging with vet doctors and farmers and all that kind of stuff, and also something that I've used in the past. So I would encourage you to also do your research as well before you try it. But I believe this is going to be helpful. As for medication at the farm, 80%, if not 90% of most farmers, and globally, not just in Africa, globally, do their own medical treatments, do their own animal treatments at their farms. And that's because it can be very expensive to get the veterinary doctors every time you need them. And this is the reason why I believe that most farmers should have a bit of an idea on how to treat the animals. It's very, very important because each time you get a vet over to come and treat your animals, they're going to charge you. They're going to charge you for facilitation, transportation. They're going to charge you for medication. So it actually ends up being a bit expensive for upcoming farmers. This is why you should know these things now, right? So if you, most people treat the animals by themselves, and then when they fail, when they see that it's not helping, that's when they have to engage the vet the vet doctors. So clinical treatment, which is what I'm talking about. So when you treat your own animals, it's actually called clinical treatment. It's basically treating an animal when you don't necessarily have to be 100% sure of what you're treating, but you see the signs and everything, and based on experience, you go like, I believe this is going to be helpful, right? So that's what they call clinical treatments. And I believe there are two things into it. So number one, it's going to be based on experience. So you've seen your dad do it, you've seen a friend, you've heard of someone do it. Practical things that you've seen with your eyes. You've observed someone, or there's a series of events that you've seen someone do it. Therefore, you also go like, you know what? I also have seen this work, right? Number two, it can be really the attitude of the person. So a lot of people have certain attitude towards something. How do you approach a certain task, for instance? So automatically, as soon as you see a cow with, or say a goat with high temperatures or something like that, automatically, that may be fever. So you straight up know this is the treatment that I need to use. So I have about, so the reason you do all those things is because you want to treat your animals, but at the same time you have to keep in mind that you don't want to overdose your animals. Because a lot of people, that's what they do, they end up overdosing. So yeah, so in this video, let me take you through about 7 medication that I think you need to have at your farm. I've actually divided it into about 3 or 4 parts. Number one is a treatment for infections. Basically, infections are very common because most animals feed on grass, on on the ground. So they pick a lot of infections. The environment can be dirty. There could be a lot of dirt, whether it's where they sleep or the water or anything like. So the animals ends up getting a lot of infections. And so one of them is ox, right, which is about, there's two of them, so 10 or 20%, right, which goes for the fever and infections, right? Number two is pen strep, which we call ngombe. So for you guys from Uganda, depending on which part of the country you're from, you might already know what it is, what ngombe is, right? Again, one more time, ngombe is really for the infections, the most serious ones, and then you have gentamicin, which also helps with the infections, and telocin, which goes for diarrhea, goes for gastro, it goes for inflammation, eczema. Those guys who understand what I'm talking about, eczema, where the goat will grow a big sore on its body. It could be anywhere basically. So those three: ox, pen strep, gentamicin, and telocin, right? Those four you need for your infections and those sorts of issues that I've talked about. Then the category number two really goes to diarrhea. Again, I'm talking about common diseases that you find at the farm. So as for diarrhea, there's the influxal oral. It's actually oral, so which means you give it through the mouth. And then there's Carwin powder, which you can mix in some other supplements like tablets. Those two are very good, especially I find the Carwin powder very powerful in helping kids. There's a lot of mortality in kids, and when you're losing kids, guys, remember, you're not making any benefits or any profits. So in kids, that's why we make profits. So you want to make sure that you give kids very good management and very good attention. And for kids, because they're still very young, the immune system hasn't built up yet. They need supplement. They need to be well looked after. So where they sleep, it has to be very, very clean. And as soon as they get the area, remember, they just knew they're starting to suckle their moms and all this. So there's a high risk or high chance that they're going to have the area. And so you have to be ready to act. And then number three will be multivitamins. So multivitamins are very, very key too. You need to have multivitamins at your farm. And the reason is it's because the deficiency or the feeding deficiency. So if feeding is a bit poor, for instance, and you give them vitamins, they actually help with the diet and the illnesses that the goats might have, right? So yeah, and then you have dewormers, right? So oral, injectable ones. You need to be able to deworm your animals. Very important, right? And then you have to have a schedule how often you deworm. Some of them may be 3 months, some of them may be 2 months, depending on how old the goat is. Then you may need eye drops for the goats, The reason I'm saying these things is sometimes doctors might be busy, veterinary doctors might be very busy. So before someone gets in there, you need to be able to treat your animals by yourself, because it reduces the chance of you losing the animals, but also it gives you the experience of knowing what you need before the doctor gets there. And hopefully it will save you some money, and you don't need the vet doctor to get to your farm. It's every time you need a doctor, if you have to get a doctor there and you can't treat anything by yourself, then you're going to end up spending so much. And we're not here to spend money. We want to be able to save some money, make some profits from the goats that we're doing, right? So those are the key things. And then spraying, obviously, for the ticks. There's always ticks, So that's done every week, at least. Depending on your area, each area is going to be different. Guys, it's very, very important that if you have this kind of medication at your farm, you don't just keep it anywhere. You need the medication storage box, which is very specific. Remember, your medication needs to be kept at a certain temperature. It can't be so cool or so warm, right? This is why you need a storage box, And these things, you're not going to learn them from school. You can teach them yourself over time. And you don't need to be a veterinary doctor to have this kind of medication at your farm. You need a digital thermometer at your farm to detect the temperatures of any animal before, and you can read other signs. You should be able, or if you see some signs, then you should use that, and then you get an idea of what you can work on. You might need some gloves and a few more other things. So guys, I hope this video is very educative. If you haven't found it very educative, if you have any question, please drop it down. Any questions, any comments, please? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it for subscribing. Once again, if you find it helpful, share it with your friends and your mates. I sign up for now. Thank you. Hi guys, it's Barak here from Barak Balls Farms. Thank you so much again for tuning in. As usual, I'm talking about goat farming and some tips and sharing some ideas with you guys. Please share this message. I want to educate as many people as possible, especially a lot of young people, and encourage you guys to get into agriculture, because agriculture is very sustainable, and it's a core it's a core of our economy, you know. And so the earlier we start to think about agriculture and modernize agriculture, the better, you know. Obviously, a number of people will have to get involved in two different sectors, like technology. That's another big one as well. But yeah, I'm specifically focused on goats farming today, as usual. And so if you have any questions, I would encourage you to drop them down into the comment section, as I'll be more than happy to get some time and go back in and answer some of those questions that you might have. I hope you have been enjoying our videos. Thank you for those that are commenting again. So I can't thank you enough. Today, guys, I'm gonna talk to you about something pretty interesting, you know. A lot of you guys don't know that when you have new goats at your farm, there's something that you need to do. So a lot of farmers, like I've been at some farms, right? Or growing up at a farm myself, and my parents' farms or neighbors' farms, you know. When people bring animals from outside, whether they're stocking or whether it's one animal or two, they just bring it straight up and mix it with other animals that are existing. You know, that's a very risky business. If we are talking about doing farming as a serious project or adventure, in fact, not a project or adventure. By the way, when you're doing farming, you can once yourself as an entrepreneur, you know, because as an entrepreneur, you're there to think out of the box, you know. And really, that's not just farming, it's anything that you do. If you don't think out of the box, you're going to end up making messes and mistakes, and it's going to cost you heavily, you know. And this is why I'm trying to talk about this sort of, doing this sort of education, because I know a lot of people are still making the same mistakes. So you have new animals at your farm, you have to quarantine your animals. This is the topic today, right? How do you treat new animals? Do you just bring them in and mix them with others? What do you do, you know? So in modern farming, when you bring new animals, you should never, ever mix them with the existing animals. The reason is very clear. These animals could be sick, right? Or your animals could be sick, and it's going to affect all the other animals. That's number one. Number two, animals are coming in to a new place. This is a new farm. They've not been there before, right? And so you bring them in and just pump them there. You know, what do you expect? They might be ticks that they're not familiar. It's a completely new environment. They're going to be very stressed, you know. So really, you have to think about all these things. So in other words, what am I trying to say here is, when you bring new animals at the farm, whether it's goats or cattle, whatever, it is advisable that you quarantine them. Most of you guys would have heard about quarantining during COVID-19, because most people hadn't known about it. I've heard of quarantine before, from animal quarantine, like mostly cattle being quarantined in Uganda, you know. But I didn't know it so much so until COVID-19 hit. Then that's when I actually knew that people can be quarantined too. I didn't realize. I thought it was just for the animals, you know. Anyway, the point is, if you have animals at the farm, you need to quarantine them for at least a period of 2 to a month. What am I saying here is, you need to have a house for the mainstream goats. You need to have a separate house for isolation. So if you bring new animals, and this house, you don't just isolate the animals. There's certain things that you need to do when when you quarantine your animals. For instance, on day one, you need to give them multivitamins, and that may go on for like starting from day one when they come at your farm. You need to give them multivitamins. What does multivitamins do? They give them supplements, dietary supplements. It helps them, it boosts their immunity somehow, basically, to help them adjust with the new environment. You may give them for a period of 2 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on how long you're going to isolate them. You probably need to use some antibiotics, a bit like Oxy, 20%. Give them a bit of injection, about 8 mils. Again, this is to help it adjust. It may have fever because it's a new environment, so you want to give it a boost. Then you need to deworm the animal. Probably on your first week. You want to treat it and deworm it. I normally use Arbafas, about 10%, and depending on how big the animal is, you might do about 8 or 10 mils. It really depends on how heavy your animal is, right? And then you want to spray it, and the spraying goes on for about 5 days or a week until your animal adjusts, and then you can let it in after you've checked and made sure that it's not sick, it's not going to affect all your other animals, right? So guys, that's a quick goats tip that I had for you guys today from Barack Boer Goats. I hope that you're learning something new each time I share something, and I do appreciate your comments that you leave down for me. When I get time, I'll be going back through and replying you guys and having a bit of a chat. Share with your friends if you find this very helpful, because the more people we're going to, this message is going to reach, the more people we can engage, and hopefully the more people that will get into goats farming, because the demand is there. Goat's meat, for instance, is very popular. It's much tender. There's no taboos like pork and all that kind of stuff. Most people prefer it. It's much more softer. A goat in itself is much more variable. Some milk from goats are used as dairy, or they used to make cheese and whatever. So it's actually in high demand than the cattle milk itself. Where me growing up, goat's meat was a taboo in Uganda, Western Uganda. Growing up in Western Uganda, no one takes goat's milk, right? And here I am in Australia, goat's meat is on demand. Not just here, even in Uganda itself. It's just that I didn't know, And so you can think about doing goat farming from many perspectives, You can do goat farming because of the value that is in their milk. If you want to do dairy goats farming, you can do beef farming. You can do breeding farming, right? That's why I'm talking about all kinds of goats, Kalahari, which are red, by the way. The Boers, which are usually white with some less color onto their face, except the one that goes to be here for the most part. And then the Savannah, which are kind of like in between, right? Or the locals. So guys, look, goat is a variable animal, right? Its meat is very, very, very sweet. People like it. It's very common. It's expensive. You can use the skin for whatever it is. Basically, anything that you see on a goat is very variable. So guys, have a think about it. The market is also becoming much more open. Just looking at Uganda as a country, you can also export it out of Uganda in other countries too, But we need to get into more serious farming in order for our market to get much more broad, This East African community in Kenya and Tanzania and Rwanda and all these countries, Sudan, people are trading between countries. It's much, much more easier. So we should not limit ourselves to just one country. The world is so big, they look at the world as a global village because of globalization, right? This is why when something happens in America today, it actually affects someone in Uganda. The same thing, something happens in China, it affects all of us in Australia and Canada and Europe and everywhere, That's why when there's a war in Ukraine and Russia, a lot of food items, it hikes, not just in Australia here, but in Africa, in Uganda and everywhere, So it's a global village, it's a global world, Things that happens in some countries do affect other countries because there's much more movement happening. Technology has made things a lot easier. Therefore, it's easy to get the information that you need. You can jump on YouTube and Google something or go on Google, search anything you want, how to make this, how to do this, and there will be information waiting for you. These days, most people have phones, mobile phones. And so we have access to a lot of information. but it's also how are we going to use that information. We need to use that information in a much more productive way that's going to add value on us. That means we need to do something, maybe entertaining, maybe educating, maybe on our business, and so for me, I encourage more young people to get involved into agriculture farming, goats farming, because not everyone is, it's not going to be easy for everyone to get into goats farming, right? Because there may be some. I understand. I'm not trying to act like I don't know that there's a lot of people who can't afford to, for instance, get a farmland where they can do their business projects, right? Some people can't afford to get money to buy goats, blah blah blah. But let me tell you something. Resource number one is human resource. That's you yourself, okay? By mere fact that you're listening at this video, it's not by coincidence. There's a reason why you're listening to this video, right? And even me, when I started about goat farming, I started just as an idea. I actually had wanted to do goat farming before. I really wanted to get into goat farming or some kind of farming or even cattle farming, whatever. But I did not have the land, right? What did I do? I started reading books and listening to a lot of audios about people who are doing it, And so that went on for weeks and months and years, and people kept saying, you can do it, start up like this is what you need, break it down. And so the more you keep hearing it, right, it has an impact on you. So be mindful of what you're listening to, because they say your ears are your window to your heart. Don't take it for granted. You might spend a whole day reading negative news, reading about negative stuff going on. Yes, that's there, but it's up to you what you need to choose to do. In a sense, I'm trying to encourage you guys to think about this. The first thing you need to do is have a plan, have in mind what you need to do, and then the resources, the money and all that kind of stuff also do kick in once you really know what to do. There's a lot of people who have so much money out there too. They would love to invest it too, but they're not sure how to invest it, So again, what I'm saying is, let's have a think about what we need to do. What is variable, what's not variable, and that's going to help us. Guys, I'm going to end up there for now. I really, again, want to thank you for subscribing and sharing this message. I hope you've learned one thing or two. Like I promised, when I get time, I'll be coming and we'll be jazzing from time to time. And thank you very much again. Have a wonderful day.